everyone. Welcome to Empowering Exceptional Minds, the podcast diving into neurodiversity through real conversations with parents, individuals, and professionals on challenges, strengths, and unique experiences. I'm your host, Maayan Glaser-Koren, an educational therapist, ADHD educator, and ASD specialist. At Educational Therapy LLC, my private practice, we support kids and adults with executive function and learning differences toward confidence and independence. This podcast is a collaboration with Wiz Therapy, connecting individuals to providers and streamlining services for neurodiverse communities. Our goal is to share strategies, stories, and insights to empower families, educators, and professionals. Before we begin, a quick disclaimer. The views and opinions expressed by our guests are their own and do not necessarily reflect those of this podcast or Wiz Therapy. The conversations here are for information and empowerment, not a substitute for professional or medical advice. And most importantly, if you are experiencing a mental health emergency, please dial 911 immediately, or you can text 741-741 to reach the crisis text line in the US for support. Hi, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Empowering Exceptional Minds. We are going to talk today on IEP 504. This is part of our series in the topic. And this time we're going to have an educational advocate, and she's going to explain to us what she does and why so many families turning to advocacy support. We're also going to go behind the scenes of educational advocacy to unpack what parents don't always see, the strategy, the data, the quiet negotiations that can shape a child's entire school experience. Our guest today shares her personal journey into advocacy and what continues to drive her work with families navigating complex school systems. We're going to dive into one of the most common and often confusing moments for parents when a school recommends moving from an IEP to a 504 plan. Why does this happen? When it is appropriate, and when might it raise red flags? You'll learn the key language to listen for in meetings, the critical questions to ask, and the data you should always request before agreeing to any change in services. This episode also tackles common misconceptions about advocacy, how to collaborate with schools without feeling like you're in a fight, and the one thing every parent should understand before making decisions about their child's support. If you've ever felt unsure, overwhelmed, or pressured in a school meeting, this conversation will give you clarity, confidence, and practical tools to advocate effectively for your child. We're here for you. If you have any question, any comment, please reach out. We're happy to help. Thank you for listening, and we really hope it's going to be helpful. And what is really important to say is that I'm going to introduce our guest, is that we're in this together. The schools really do the best that they can with what they have on site. So the child is the center. And we always want to try to work together as a team. Minds, we are on our series of IEPs and 504, and this is another episode about this topic. And today I have another fantastic advocate who is sitting here with me, Melinda David-Gillinger. Thank you so much for being here today. Please introduce yourself. Please help our families understand what got you to this. On this journey. And and I have so many questions. You guys, you have no idea. Before I hit record, poor Melinda, she just logged in and I was bombarding her with questions. But here we go. Welcome.
Thank you. It's an honor to be here. My story could go long, so let me summarize. But like many people, it started with my firstborn. And she was born with profound bilateral hearing loss. And I knew right away, I don't know how I knew, but no one believed me. Doctors didn't believe me. Family didn't believe me. Everyone thought she was happy. But I knew she couldn't hear. And I don't know how I knew, but I knew. So for 10 months, the first 10 months of her life, I spent working to get people to believe me. And then we got the diagnosis and I was heartbroken. And then we worked on the process. And my daughter is the first person in our town to be deaf, and I chose spoken language. She was also born before the what's called the cochlear implant was approved by the FDA. So she's in that first batch of kids who ever were born deaf, got the implant, listen, learned to listen and speak. So back then I said, I want to talk to someone who was born deaf, implanted at 3, graduated from high school. And the doctors all said, it's going to be her. Like there is no one yet. So that, to answer your question about how I came to this, I had to like create a path where there was no path for my own child. Also, my bachelor's was in psychology, and I went through this for so many years. I thought I have to go back and I have to help the system. I wanted to help the system, the educational system. So I got my master's in special education, my thesis, my everything. And I really thought I was going to help my district, my area, my state, my country. Like I just thought it was going to expand. And once people knew better, you do better, right? But in the meantime, I was helping one family at a time. The first kid that I helped was extremely gifted, extremely dyslexic. I wasn't doing this as my profession, but I helped him and his mom overcome the objections of the school and the district. And about every 3 years, she would reach out and she would say, hey, they're trying to dismiss him from special ed because they don't know what to work on because he was so bright. They were looking at grades. And I would say, is he still gifted? Is he still dyslexic? There's still a discrepancy. And so we were able to keep his IEP through high school. And then he went on to college. And even when he got a job with the CDC, the first thing he did was ask for a speech to text technology in order to do his job. So it really developed like a snowball, like one family at a time, one child at a time. I just started helping people. And then I left my paycheck job and have been doing this for over 20 years now.
You've been through so many schools.
I serve families all throughout the state of California, like San Diego to San Francisco, Riverside to Antelope Valley, also out of state. I've also gone out of the country. My family brought me to a British international school to help their kids and train that team. So, yeah.
You and I met through a colleague in the Bay Area. Thank you, Sarah. Joining
Yeah.
up with Sarah. Woo! And we kind of clicked right away talking about the challenges that we see with the districts, a lot of pushback. And, this is very difficult for me because I feel like, and guys, I'm honest with you now. I'm going to be completely transparent. I really, maybe I'm naive, but it's really hard for me to believe it's them or us.
Right.
I really want to say we're all here for the child. There are things that the district cannot do because of training and clinical, and the system, unfortunately, is broken. And that's what I came across also as a parent. Though for me, I had support and this is my job. So I knew what to ask. Being said, and this has happened before we hit the record button when both of us were talking about that sometimes it feels like it's like when we are dealing with insurance. Like you totally. I'm like, yes. And everything gets to be a fight. And parents are overwhelmed. And we are like thinking, why? Why does it have to be this way? And some parents are afraid to ask for IEP or 504s because they don't want, maybe they have a really nice teacher at the school right now and they want to keep, it's just this year and they don't want to sound like they are complaining. They don't want to go to that because they love the teacher. And I always tell parents, this is not about the teacher. The teacher is awesome. This is about protecting your child by law.
Yes.
Can I ask you, just for the sake of our listeners, because I feel like there are so many parts of IEPs and 504s, but can we simplify just for the sake of it and just really explain what really 504 is, because IP, it's services, and it's that's what we do to get the services. What is a 504? And why do schools go to a 504 a lot instead of IPs?
That's a really great question. If you don't mind, I also want to say something about what you just said
Sure.
with the team, the difficulty. I always like to remind districts, it's not the school team and the family team, it's the students team. We're all here for the student. And I tell families that, and I remind districts, we're not the family team. We're not against each other. We're all here for the student. So I just wanted to say, because you kind of like, you talked about that a minute ago.
Yeah.
Yeah, to answer your question, so we all, well, I don't know if we all know, so I'll say an IEP is data driven. You identify the needs drive the goals drive services and accommodations and placement. So, and placement has to be least restrictive. So there's a lot involved in an IEP, and it's very protected by federal law and state law. The 504 plan is under the Americans with Disabilities Act, and the 504 is a general education function. You don't have special educators in your team. You have a general, typically an assistant principal who doesn't do IEPs, a gen ed assistant principal, and gen ed teachers, and it's accommodations. That's it. There is the documentation of what is the need. Maybe the student has dyslexia. Maybe the student has ADHD. What, I don't know. There's a lot of reasons. I don't do a lot of 504s because I really believe that we need more protection than that. But I do 504s, and you talk about the reason you have a 504, and it's all accommodations, and it's all general education. And it's a gen ed assistant principal who has to make sure that the gen ed teachers are implementing the accommodations, and that's it. There are no goals, there are no services, and if they don't, there's very little recourse. You can keep meeting, you can keep reminding. I've had some great self-advocates. I had a beautiful girl who has now graduated from high school, and she had a 504 the last couple of years. Family didn't want it, but it's what happened. And she advocated, and she would remind her parents. She would tell me, she would tell the assistant principal when our accommodations weren't being honored and implemented. Sometimes she was a senior, she'd go back to her beautiful, loving freshman teacher who did and ask for help. But there's not a lot of stuff we can do with the 504 except keep reminding them, hey, we have this document, we have these accommodations, please implement the accommodations.
I'm going to push back on this one a little bit, because what I noticed that is happening is that we are, and you just gave that in your example, that your specific individual was able to advocate for herself. Now, it's not common. This is very rare that the teenager will advocate for herself. We actually, the idea that the kid needs to go to the teacher who might, that's an authority. He might be have some challenges with that authority. Maybe this teacher is not nice.
Yeah. Yep.
And maybe the teacher is very strict, or maybe it's a fantastic teacher. But then to ask for help and to advocate at these very young ages in middle school and high school is not something that, like, I specifically don't think it's fair to ask a kid to do that.
Yeah. I always have self-advocacy goals in my IEPs, and she had an IEP from from preschool and elementary school. It didn't get taken away from her until middle school. So we had always worked on advocacy. She wasn't always, you're right. She would cry at home. She would fake it and mask at school. This technical term, she was masking, and then she'd fall apart at home. But we just always kept talking to her, and as she matured and as she realized I have a right to this, she would try. But you're right. A lot of kids can't, don't know how to, are afraid to. They try and get shut down, or everyone says, well, look at their grades, they're fine.
Mm-hmm.
grades don't mean anything. I mean, they mean a lot to families and they mean a lot to me, but that grades have nothing to do with access. And grades have nothing to do if a kid is advocating and saying, I need to use my speech to text, or I need to go to I have extended time, or I need to go to a quiet location, or, can we close the window? Can we close the door? And if they get shut down by that authority figure, like you mentioned, now what?
I have a lot of cases like that. So for me, when I have even a client, it's like, I don't need a 504. I'm not using my 504. And sometimes I will dig deeper and say, oh, why don't you use it? And I'm kind of, I'm trying to help them understand you're not the only one in the classroom that has a 504.
Right. Yeah.
You will be surprised how many kids in a classroom have a 504.
Or an IEP in Gen Ed.
Or an IB. Yeah.
No
Yeah.
idea.
It's true. But I think most of the challenges see in middle school, also because peer, right?
Mhm.
They don't want to be different from their peers. They know they're different.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah.
But you know what is fun to talk to them about is every single middle school student with a need or without a need. Those are the years where you don't want to be different. You think everyone's looking at you. You just moved from this one safe teacher to six different teachers who have six different personalities, and your body's going through whatever it's going through. So these kids don't know that everybody's having these same thoughts.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's really important, parents, also to talk with it with your child, because this is something that I talk with parents and they tell me my child doesn't want to have a 504, doesn't want to use the 504. Or I had incident to the parents where have challenges and they were concerned about stigma, labeling their child. I would like us to kind of get more into that because I feel this is a lot of like a misconception when it comes to advocacy, and why it is so crucial. And you touched something really important because you said, oh, you know what? I actually want to have more people doing an IEP than 504. And I agree with you because the 504 doesn't protect us completely, whereas the IEP does. So can you, I'm going to break this question. So what are the most common misconceptions parents that reach out to you have about advocacy?
I think so. There's two kinds of families. There's the family that reaches out and says, I need help me now, I've been going through this, and let's go. I got, and I'm like, I got you, I'll put my arms around you, I got you. The other family, which you're asking about, the misconceptions, is I don't want to make them mad. I don't want
Mm-hmm.
to I don't want them to retaliate against my child. I don't want them to not like me. Like you said earlier, we have a lovely teacher, but I will remind them that teacher's not guaranteed. That teacher could go away tomorrow. That teacher's going to go away next year. It's not about the teacher. It's about what does your child need. And families are afraid to push against authority, whether it's for fear of retaliation, for fear of not being liked, for fear of some people are raised that you don't question doctors and teachers. Like you just listen and you do whatever they say. And so you have to kind of break through that and remind families you're an equal member. Under the law, you're an equal member of your child's team. The speech therapist is an expert in speech. The special ed teacher has their expertise, the OT, the psychologist, but you're an expert in your child. We're a team and you're an equal member. And families don't know that. They think they're supposed to go and listen. This is what we're going to do. This is what we're going to work on. And I always have to remind families and teams, you're proposing to work on this. You're proposing these services. We're going to work together, and it's ultimately the family's decision for consent. Now that's not every state. So this podcast may go out. So I do want to put a caveat. Federal law covers every state. State laws can only add to the federal law. They can't take away. So there are some states where they don't have to wait for the signature. But if we're talking California, the family has the final signature to consent to any changes. And they can't make any changes until the family decides. So families don't know. They're afraid of making people mad. They're afraid of being a problem. But I will say, in the end, when we get through the process, my experience has been that the team is happy. The team will tell me, maybe privately, thank you. Like I didn't have the authority. The teachers don't have the authority to question the admin. Maybe an admin says, I didn't know what I didn't know. But in the end, if we take our egos out of it and it's about the child, there's usually gratitude.
I'm smiling because I sit in those meetings and egos are big.
Ooh, they lead to
I, I'm like, oh my gosh. I had a few years ago, I was sitting helping advocating for my clients. And I'm not to my listeners, to our listeners, I'm not an educational advocate. I know basic things and I know how to read those goals, but really, if you need more than that, go to Melinda or to people in your area that do this kind of stuff. And but I was sitting there and helping my clients, and I was sitting in that meeting, and the resource specialist was so mean to me because I was outside provider. And I was like, why so mean? I'm trying to, we have the same child. We're trying
yeah,
to, that's why I said this is not about them and us. This is not about the home team and the school team. This is about us together building this beautiful, net around this kid. So this
right.
kid is not going to fall
Yeah.
and support wherever we can. And I do see the ego. It is happening. So to our educators out there, we love you, we respect you, we appreciate you. You work so freaking hard. Um, we hear you and we hear the challenges. We're just asking with the ego because we're here together.
Can I tell you a funny story?
Sure.
You didn't ask me, but what you just said in my career, a lot of teachers have their hands tied too. A
Yeah.
lot of teachers see what the student needs. And while they have to take care of their class, they have to take care of their job, a lot of times they are grateful for the advocacy. They're like, oh, thank God this family's finally asking for what their kid needs because they didn't have the freedom to offer it up. And I have a teacher who called me over 10 years ago, long, long time ago. And she hired me to advocate and said, come to the meeting and rip me to shreds because my boss won't let me do the right thing. Now, I don't, shreds. I don't, that's not my style. But she said, this kid needs help. Please help him and just go at me because I am not giving him what he needs and my boss won't let me. So I am a teacher. So for the listeners out there, I am an educator and I am a parent and I am a consultant and I am a collaborator. And I know that sometimes you've got too much on your plate and your hands are tied. And so advocacy can be the way for your students to get what they need when you've done all you could do.
It's true. I had similar. Just hearing you talking about it, I had two cases where friends of mine who are teachers, told me what is happening, and I guide them what to do without them getting into trouble because the teacher can get, they're risking themselves in a lawsuit if so this we need to be very clear why my teacher don't say anything. Well, because in a situation like you explain right now, they can risk themselves in a lawsuit, and sometimes they can even lose their jobs. So I want to be very clear that as parents, just do it. Reach out and ask for those things because this is really important.
Something then, and you said something earlier about the stigma and parents and students saying, I
Mm-hmm.
don't use it, I don't need it. First of all, it's the district's job to implement it. The student doesn't have to say, please implement my 504, please implement my IEP. It's the adult's job to implement what was agreed to and signed. And second of all, the stigma, I like to teach all my kids that I work with exactly what their disability is, exactly what their processing disorder is. And I want everyone I ever work with to stand on the top of the mountain and go, I belong here, and this is what I need. I belong here and I need speech to text. I belong here and I need extra time. I belong here and I need to sit in a certain spot. And there's nothing wrong with me. That's what I want all the kids to know is just because you have a 504 or an IEP, there is nothing wrong with you. And I used to teach my students that when I was a classroom teacher is because what did they tell me? They told me I started teaching high school and they said RSP. Now we know that means Resource Specialist Program. And then the kids said, oh, they always said it means really special people. But to themselves, talking amongst themselves, they decided that it meant really stupid people. I hate that word. I never use that word. That's what they decided. So I was like, no, 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 no. You don't even get an IEP for a learning disability unless you have average to above average intelligence and you process differently. There's nothing wrong with you. You're intelligent. You just process differently. And that's what I say to families who are worried about the stigma or the special ed thing, because maybe they grew up in a place where kids with special needs were treated differently or looked at differently. But we have to talk about the least restrictive environment. And there's a lot of kids in general education with an IEP, and there's nothing wrong with them.
I'm really interested about what you think about because I'm in different kind of social media groups and I was looking around and really looking on what questions parents ask. And recently, and this also happened to somebody who's close to me too, like one of my friends. And one of the questions was, my child is in middle school and they have an IEP. I'm not going to give too many examples because, to all listeners, there are different types of services that you can get through an IEP, whether you're dyslexic, ADHD, whatnot, need like, maybe you have like health issue. So what I wanted to say is that this, in those specific cases, let's say the kid is dyslexic, and then they decide that when moving to high school, they're going to switch from an IEP to a 504. So they had the meeting right now at 8th grade. They said, okay, so next year your child is going to have a 504. They're not going to have an IEP anymore. And even though there was a pushback from the parent, they still said, no, we're still going to do the 504, and kind of convinced the mom to sign the 504. So this is really interesting to me. Why do they decide because of transitioning to high school? They cannot predict the future. How do you know if this kid is not going to need additional services?
Oh gosh, this is so loaded. So I think that there are a lot of reasons behind the scenes why districts want to take away the IEP and move to a 504. Funding, special ed funding could be a reason. Caseloads could be a reason. They could mistakenly think good grades mean they don't need the IEP, but that's not the case. And you just said they talked her into it. I think that teams move from an IEP to a 504 to reduce their level of responsibility. And they justify it maybe with good grades, or the kids said they don't want it. So let's remember that the student is not an educational rights holder. We do want to honor the students, but they don't hold educational rights. It's the parents. Let's also remember that everything in an IEP is data-driven. So transition isn't a reason to move from an IEP to a 504. Data is. So if somebody is saying, oh, now that we're going from middle school to high school, he only needs a 504, the answer is, where's the data? Where are the assessments? And it can't be about grades. And honestly, it can't even be about goals, because sometimes the transition meeting happens in between the IEP dates. It's not even time for the IEP to be over. Sometimes it's when the IEP is due and it's all mixed together. But if they met their goals and that goal is with adult prompting, then we still need a goal for independence next year with the same skill, whatever it may be. If they still have a disability that is negatively impacting their ability to access their education, that's the key thing. If their disability is negatively impacting their ability to access their education, then they still need an IEP. And you can't get rid of an IEP, and you can't even get rid of a service without an assessment that shows it's not needed. So if you want to get rid of OT, if you want to get rid of speech, if you want to get rid of a service that's in the IEP, you have to do an assessment and show that it's no longer needed. And the thing that makes me so sad about what you just said is in high school, we also have what's called an individualized transition plan that becomes a part of the IEP. And in the ITP transition plan, we look at post-secondary goals, post-secondary academic goals, post-secondary employment goals, and post-secondary independent living goals. How can you say that an eighth grader, I don't even know this, any eighth grader with an eligibility, that eligibility is there because of data. Just because you're going to high school doesn't mean you're no longer eligible. So any family that's being pressured needs to understand, stay put. You can sign in disagreement and invoke stay put, and your IEP doesn't go anywhere. And you could even think like, oh, maybe he doesn't need it. But let's get through the first 30 to 60 days of high school and go, oh, they were right. Okay, let's get rid of it now. But to take something away as you transition to a new setting, to me, doesn't make any sense unless you have clear data. Did I answer your question? I hope I did. I hope I'm making sense.
Yes, I'm just really sad right now.
Me too. Me too.
It's really saddened me. Especially, kids that also have IEP for mental health reasons.
Yeah. That
And
doesn't go.
no, it doesn't. And that's what, or ADHD, right? So these things do not go away. And on the other way, many times when we are transitioning, then the load on the executive functioning is so high in high school that taking those services and just giving accommodation, oh yeah, you can go to the counselor room. You don't need an IEP for that. And that's not. So what do you do when you have something like that? When they say, oh, you can use the counselor room anytime. You can go. I mean, we're gonna put it in the 504 that you can use the school psychologist services, whatever.
I say thank you so much. And they can also do that in the IEP. But the IEP has needs and goals and services. So if they can use the counselor's office from a 504, they can also use it with an IEP. And we haven't established that there are no need for goals. So let's keep talking and, show us the data, because we'll often come to an IEP and someone will say the goal was met at 60%. Now, for me as an advocate, I know that that's not mastery. And families hear the word met, but I say, but it was written for 80%. So it's actually not met. Don't say met at 60%. If the goal is independent and they say, oh, they met the goal with 1 to 2 teacher prompts. Prompts aren't in the goal, so that's not met. But they use the word met, and that's all families hear, not for anything wrong with them, just it's their child. And it's like, oh, wait, what do you mean met at 60%? What do you mean met with prompting? The goal doesn't say with 1 to 2 teacher prompts. So you have to check the box not met and write a new goal.
When you say these things, I'm also thinking about like a few things we kind of talked about before I hit the record button was about, what kind of training for dyslexia, for example. And I feel like I would love you to repeat that before we kind of hit the record, like, because you said something so important. And I feel like our listeners need to know that we have resource specialists and we have special education teachers, but we also need to understand that not all of my colleagues who are special ed teachers and resource specialists or paraeducators are trained and certified with the science of reading. And I'm not going to sugarcoat that. We know that the US is behind with reading skills and reading comprehension. We also have mix of instruction time during the pandemic. I have kids that really struggle with writing skills from a syntax level. I'm not going to open that Pandora box, but I just wanted to say that what parents need to really listen to in meetings, what do they need to say and to ask? Those who are listening, this is IEP season, we know that. What do you need to ask when it comes to dyslexia, when it comes to dysgraphia, and when it comes to dyscalculia? I know I gave you a lot of stuff. Let's break it down. Let's start with dyslexia.
So, and it could be for all three, but
Right.
everything is data driven, and families need to know that what you just said, not every special ed teacher is a reading specialist. Not every resource teacher or special day class teacher is a reading specialist. So for dyslexia, we need to ask for an intensive research-based intervention program. That's the phrase. At your IEP, I am requesting an intensive research-based intervention program. Then you have to pay attention who's administering it. Because sometimes districts will say, well, we use a little Lindenwood Bell, a little Orton Gillingham, a little this, a little that. Or, oh, we have this program in the assistant principal's office. Then your next question is who is trained and certified to implement that program? And somebody getting a 1 hour training with the district over the summer does not mean they're a reading specialist. You have to dig deep. You have to keep asking questions. You don't have to be mean. You don't have to attack anyone. It's questioning and the answers will come. Are you trained? And if they say, oh, I'm working with the Lindenwood Bell specialist, okay, how often do they come into your classroom? Well, they don't. They just log in and watch. Or are they doing the pre-testing before the service is provided and then the post-testing? If the answer is no, then you're not really getting a research-based intervention program. Whatever it may be, you have to make sure you have a reading specialist. And then if it's dyscalculia and the others, like what is the certification, the training? And it's not one training from the district. They have to be a specialist in, and it has to be a research-based, intensive research-based intervention program. And research-based is the key. It's not oh, on Mondays we do this and Tuesdays we have a little bit of this and a little bit of that. You know, we're not making dinner, we're not adding spices. We got to target the need with a trained professional.
Yeah, for math, yeah, I'm just gonna say one thing. For math, it will be multisensory math provider with understanding of how math and concepts and how it looks also in the brain. So I just wanted to clarify that for our listeners.
Yeah, exactly. There are a lot of, and I love the multisensory. You made me think of touch math right there when you said that. But yeah, it's what is specifically research based for my child's identified area of need.
It's crucial.
Yeah.
It's crucial. And you know what's really interesting? Because I see them when they're in middle school. I mean, I do have some little ones, but the little are like third graders. So with that in mind, when I see them in middle school, and because of the lack of like I said, missing instruction with writing, so I want to be clear that writing is kind of challenging too, because when I sit them down in minutes, like I mentioned at the beginning of this podcast, they missed a lot of writing instruction during the pandemic. And there are very limited programs out there that districts maybe buy to teach writing. And I use the word buy because if you think about it, and parents I don't know if you understand this, this is a marketing platform for, districts buy, curriculums.
Yes.
So
Yes.
we need to ask, what do you use?
What program do you use? Exactly. And I love that you brought up writing because it made me think of while we're talking about the intervention for whatever, whichever intervention we're talking about, the research-based intervention, we can also, through the IEP process, talk about how they can access grade level work that their peers are reading with their eyes. We can help them demonstrate their knowledge that their peers are able to get down on paper with writing or typing by replacing it with audiobooks. Maybe they can listen while they track. They can have highlighter reader strips. There's a lot of accommodations we can put in place. But if they're struggling with reading or math or writing, we can put accommodations and alternatives to their demonstration of their knowledge. So if they listen to the same novel that their peers are reading, of Mice and Men, if they can't read it and process it with their eyes for whatever reason, they can listen to it. If they can't write an essay, maybe they can speak it. Use speech to text technology. It doesn't even cost any money anymore. When I started advocating, it cost a lot of money to buy a speech to text program for a district. Now it's on all of our devices. It's on every Chromebook. And so we just have to teach the kids to use that to get their thoughts out on paper and then maybe edit it or something. And with math, we have a lot of strategies that we can use. We can use graph paper. We can turn line paper sideways. We can, while we're doing the research-based intervention program, to address the issue, it doesn't mean that they have to fall behind. I think that's what I'm trying to say. They don't have to fall behind or not access grade level curriculum. They can demonstrate their knowledge in a different way. They can have questions read aloud and verbally respond and take the same test in a quiet environment. So,
Yeah,
go ahead.
no, you're right. When I kind of talk with parents about IEP and goals with writing, I always say, what are we looking at? Are we looking on the writing for the sake of writing? Or are we looking at writing for demonstrating knowledge? Because there are different ways to do that. If you're asking the child to write an essay, okay, then we are looking on writing for writing, right? We need to do an argumentative essay or whatnot. So we have to teach them how to write that too, or to teach them the the tech so they can use it and not just throw it at them, right? Because many times you will see, like, even in a 504, allow the use of graphic organizer. Okay, but do they know how to use it?
Teach them how to use a graphic organizer. Exactly. Yeah.
Allow them to type. Do they know how to type?
Right.
Do they type fast enough? So there are so many things to kind of, keep in mind when we do this kind of work. And yeah. So is there any data points for or documentation families can ask before agreeing to sign an IEP?
Oh gosh, absolutely. So the present levels of performance, the family needs to be able to give their input. Don't just listen, but say, wait, 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 they can't do that. Or yes, they can. They can do more than that. So the present levels of performance is one data point. The progress on goals, 100% data driven. You need to make sure that the progress on goals is based on data of working on the goals, not, oh, shoot, it's almost time for the IEP. Yeah, I think you can do that and check. No, 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 no. Where's the data? Where's the data on this goal? And remember to look for those little keys like, the goal was at 80% independently, and they say met at 60% with adult prompts. Well, then that's not met. That's a data point. And then we need a new goal for next year's IEP. Um, and then the goals are data driven. So you always want to look at the goal and the baseline, and you want to make sure they're aligned because the baseline needs to have the percentage of where they are on the skill that the goal is. So let's just go super simple. I think you said earlier, like words per minute, and
Mhm.
that's a super simple one. If they're going to say they'll read this many words per minute, with this percentage of accuracy, then the baseline has to have their current words per minute and percentage of accuracy. If they're going to say that they're going to do fractions, multiplication and division of fractions, and the baseline is about addition and subtraction of fractions, then the baseline and the goal are not aligned. A lot of times the baseline will be all the things they can do, and then the goal is something they can't do, but we don't have the, where are they now? Are they 0%, 20%, 50%? Where are they now on that skill that's in the goal? So those are all data points to look at. And before you agree to leave an IEP and go to a 504, there have to be assessments. There has to be data to show that they no longer have the needs, that their disability is no longer negatively impacting their ability to access their education. And grades are not how we measure that.
I think that was what happened to my friend. It's this one, that sentence.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And teachers, gen ed teachers don't know that. Gen ed teachers don't have a degree in special education. So I'm not mad at them that they're confused. Oh, this kid has great grades. Why do they need help? But it's not about grades. It's about accessing the education independently, not teaching yourself at home until 11 o'clock at night because you missed it in class. Yeah.
You just like touched the point. You heard me like sigh because again, a few years ago, I had a high schooler. He worked his behind off, sitting, amazing grades, A plus until 11. He has no life, no life. We tried to get him um, even a 504 at some point. And then they said no. So he said he was in the meeting, right? That was 2 years ago. I'm sure he graduated college already. But he said, do you want me to fail? I don't understand.
Yeah.
And that was heartbreaking.
Yeah, exactly. Some of these kids who are really in tune, I have a middle school student who said that to his team. He said, I feel like you're setting me up to fail in middle school, in high school, and in life. And I'm like, oh, you just broke my heart. He said that. That's how he felt.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, we can continue talking about this. I have so many cases like this. And this is what really hurts, I think, the most is that we have cases like this. Um, so to finish kind of our conversation, um, what's one thing you wish that parents knew? Um, I mean, we kind of covered that agreeing for services. So let me ask something a little bit different. Um, how can parents advocate without feeling like they're fighting the school?
So I'll answer both. I wish parents knew that they didn't have to sign the day of the meeting. They have a right to read the IEP and sign an agreement, disagreement, or partial agreement. They don't have to agree, and they don't have to sign that day, and they don't have to. They 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 have a right to review everything and make sure it's accurate. Um, they have a right to stay put. Parents don't know stay put. Um, but you changed your question. What did you say?
No, it's
Oh,
okay. I mean,
advocacy.
I'm happy you are going to talk about both.
Yeah, yeah. And then the second question was oh, advocacy.
Yeah, how can parents advocate without feeling like they're fighting the
Right.
school?
That's the key. That was the key. Um, I think it comes with remembering. We talked earlier about egos, like IEPs are full of egos. So as a parent, if you remember, it's not about what you want, it's about what your child needs. It's not about the best, it's about appropriate. And if you can sit in that pocket and you can ask questions and respectfully disagree, and then you can say, you know what? I'm not trying to fight with you. If you could write down my request, write down your denial, we can move on. I use that all the time, by the way. Um, because the IEP team is not the end of the road. The IEP team makes a decision, and then you can agree or disagree in part or in whole. And you can go to someone at the district office, a director of special ed, someone higher up, and you can keep talking. It's not over. And I think that's how you don't fight. Like if this person isn't going to change their mind at the meeting, then just stop. Just say, please document my request and document your denial, and let's move on. You're not going to change someone's mind. And that's where it turns into kind of a fight or an ego battle. Because the teacher or the provider or the admin or whoever is like, this is my job, this is what I know. If you hear words like can't, always, have to, never, those are red flags. If they say we can't, we never, we always, we have to, this is an individualized education plan. This is what your individual child needs. It's not about what the district can't, always, has to, never. So if they're not going to change their mind, don't fight with them. Just say, okay, document my request, document your denial.
That's really good. Red flags and patterns to look for in a meeting. So thank you for sharing that. To our listeners, I'm going to add Melinda's website to the description of this podcast. I hope that you get out of this conversation empowered and not frustrated. Seriously, the law is on your side as parents, is on our side. I've been there too. Melinda did that as well. And we are here for you for any question, follow-up you may have. Thank you for listening. Don't forget to subscribe, follow us, and share it with people that are in the process or thinking about it. And it doesn't matter how old your child is, just, reach out and ask for it and start the clock ticking. Melinda, thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.